Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Picasso Pregame Show here on the Crowd Assist Podcast. Your friend Jake Micah here hosting, along with our friend from Cover One, Ryan Sullivan at Sports Rock 2. Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We had this is my last long weekend before the kids come back to school, so I'm just enjoying it. I was supposed to play golf today, but we got rained out. But luckily they let me push it back, which is funny because I was going to play on a rain check from a previous session,
Oh my
and that so I,
gosh.
I just keep getting pushed back. But got pushed back one more day. Excited to watch some Bills despite some of the news that's come out of late. But how are
Yep.
you doing, Jake?
Good. Yeah, you have some bad luck with your golf games. Apparently, it's the golf gods are working against you the last couple of days. But yeah, we're gonna cover all the different news of that's been going on with the Bills. Obviously, if you're following this podcast, you're watching this podcast, you know what's going on. First, let's get into our sponsors. This is sponsored by Picasso's Pizza. I mean, they ship nationwide. They've got some of the best pizza in Buffalo. I know that I've ordered some here out to Chicago. I'm sure that people have been sending it out there to you, Ryan, in Connecticut. One of the best places in Buffalo. We love our sponsor, Picasso's. Great taste of Buffalo while you're away from home. The char pepperoni, you can't get it anywhere else. And I'm saying that from Chicago. Buffalo pizza over deep dish all day, any day. I can say that in the safety of my apartment. We're also sponsored by the fans of Buffalo. Fans of Buffalo, the best way to get to any Bills road game, whether alone or with a group. You can book your entire trip from hotels and flights to parties to the game. Any piece you're missing, you can find your missing piece at fansofbuffalo.com. And as always, the Crowd Assist Podcast is brought to you by Outlet Liquor. What's your outlet? Your place to buy a case. So yeah, we have to start out with the not so good news here today before we get to the Bills game. As we know, allegations against punter Matt Araiza. I'm going to read through the Tim Graham article here from The Athletic. Buffalo Bills rookie Matt Araiza and two former San Diego State teammates have been accused of gang raping a 17-year-old high school student last year. Civil suit filed in California alleges. According to the suit, Jane Doe was inebriated when she arrived and was given more alcohol by Araiza, who was 21 at the time, before he was ordered to perform oral sex on him in the side yard. And then Araiza and the two other defendants allegedly took turns sexually assaulting her for about 90 minutes in a bedroom. The lawsuit claims that Jane Doe went to the San Diego Police Department the next day and had a police investigation involving detective coaching her through conversations with Araiza and included direct quotes from Araiza advising her to be examined for a sexually transmitted disease. The police investigation is still ongoing. They attempted to reach out to Araiza's attorney and was not immediately returned. This news broke yesterday because the civil suit was filed yesterday, so it's different from the criminal investigation, which is a distinction that we do need to mention as this comes to light. A source told The Athletic that the Bills were not aware of allegations before they drafted Araiza, but were informed possibly last month. Believe the date was July 31st that we found out, or August 1st, one of those two. The Bills said last night in their only statement so far on the matter, we were recently made aware of a civil complaint involving Matt from October 2021. Due to the serious nature of the complaint, we conducted a thorough examination of the matter, which is a very important thing that I'm sure we're going to touch on there. As this is an ongoing civil case, we will have no other comment at this point. He obviously, they cut Matt Hawk this week, so he had won the punting job and was anticipated to be the starting punter. In the article, it says he was expected to play Friday night, but we now know from Adam Schefter and all the great reporters on the beat working today there in Charlotte that he is not on the field, will not play tonight, will not dress. We've seen Micah Hyde holding a little bit, Case Keenum holding for
Matt
Tyler
Barkley
Bass.
punting.
Matt Barkley, who knew that Matt Barkley was a man of so many talents? So yeah, it's Ryan. I guess I can start off with my thoughts, and I'll let you jump in after. The biggest thing has been from the organizational standpoint. I'm a public relations professional in my real life job. I don't talk about that on Twitter. I just go there to talk about football and wrestling most of the time. So don't usually mention those things. But the way that this has been handled, I think, from the Bills' perspective, is what I want to talk about. Obviously, an abhorrent, and I think that Araiza should have been cut immediately. I said that the first thing I saw it yesterday. It's a zero tolerance type of thing for me. I know how the NFL works and everything else. And I think we've seen how Brandon Beane has kind of handled situations like this in the past, where we had allegations against Terrell Dodd there I wish I had it right in front of me right now from when those allegations were out. And he said that he wants to, allow players to go through the due process and have that opportunity. But I do think it's a little bit telling that he's not playing tonight. Joe Biscaglia made the note that he wasn't in the team issued sweats and everything else too, which might be a small thing, but we don't, as I'm trying to get around to the point too, we haven't heard any communication from the team besides the statement from last night. So the small things are the big things right now. No comment is a comment in of itself. And I'm just questioning the Bills' handling of this. I honestly expected to wake up to see, Brandon Beane will have a press conference at 10 a.m. this morning and at least have some answers before we got into the football game today. But we haven't. We've all been, people spinning their wheels and kind of going crazy on Twitter and everything. This is the first time I live on my own here. So this is the first time I've been talking it out about here really with somebody, trying to take the time to collect my thoughts and everything. But I just think that it's been handled poorly from all sides, from the Bills organization side, from the lawyers side, who are acting incredibly unprofessionally with this lawsuit that is obviously extremely sensitive in topics and everything else that we're working with here. But Ryan, I'm rambling a little bit here, so I want to get your thoughts on just what the last 24 hours have been and what you think, how the Bills have handled it and how you think they're going to handle it going forward.
I mean, it's a damning report. We can sit here and talk about, wait for this, people let the due process play out. There's a lot of damning stuff in this report that ultimately I'm sure will come out once they're able to release the police reports on this. She went to the police when it happened, or a couple days when it never happened. I forget the exact timeline. They, I
believe it was 3 days.
3 days after the fact. So it's not the idea that this is some cash grab doesn't really hold up the scrutiny. The fact that Matt Araiza was on phone call, that really sketchy phone call, where at the end he kind of realizes it was a pretext call and then goes, "This is Matt Araiza." There's a lot of sketchiness, and a lot of people have said it. At the worst case scenario is that he's a fucking creep. And it's the same like with the Washington case. Worst case scenario, if you don't want to say he's a criminal, he's a creep, and that's something. And unfortunately, that's a thing that a lot of kind of creepy people in this league. We've seen a lot of people that, if you're good, people kind of forget about it. The Tyreek Hills of the world, the Kareem Hunts of the world. Like, a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, teams will overlook it. And unfortunately, teams in their draft process and their free agent processes and their scouting processes aren't really equipped to handle this stuff. And Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott in the Bills front office is no different, and that's not excusing them from it. But this is a problem around the league that teams just aren't equipped to handle sexual violence against women, violence against children. So the league is just not capable of scouting that stuff, handling that stuff, and it's just another case of it's rearing its head. And luckily, I think there's a lot of good reporters at the Bills beat that will make sure they ask Sean McDermott the right comments after this. But we're not going to get any comments until then, so it's going to be another. We're probably 5 hours from the end of the game. It's going to be another 5 hours of people speculating, comments, and I'm not going to sit here and applaud them for what they did, because they did the bare minimum. They're not playing him. That's the bare minimum. We can speculate on what it means that he wasn't on team issued sweats, but the bare minimum, they're not playing him. I think that saves a lot of Bills fans a lot of frustration. Not that it's about Bills fans, it's about the victims, but it's a messy situation. It's a disgusting situation. I hope that they do the right thing with this, and not playing him today is the right start. And hopefully there's more clarity after this game, because that's going to be the first 3, 4, 5, 6 questions when this game ends.
It's one of the most anticipated press availabilities I can remember in Bills history in my lifetime, just because of that we haven't heard from it, like you're saying. I think you made a great point about what we're used to with the NFL and kind of how that the discourse has come around with that, especially with the Watson case. It feels like it's like Groundhog Day, seeing like the reactions from Browns fans, knowing a lot of Browns fans in my life and everything, and kind of the roller coaster of emotions that they went through. And obviously that's a different case. They acquired him knowing very well the allegations that were all against him for a year. And as far as we know, the Bills and the NFL were not made aware of anything. That's one of the other things with the lawyers. There was some miscommunication where they said the NFL was aware, and then they're like, well, actually, no, the NFL wasn't aware. We made them aware afterwards. And guys have been, they're gotten the combine invites taken away for less, and he was at the combine. So that I think there's some credence to the fact that the NFL wasn't fully aware of what this situation was, but it doesn't. You're right. They're not equipped for this. Like NFL organizations are not equipped to handle these types of things, but that doesn't excuse them doing the right thing and handling it the right way. I think they put their social media person in a terrible position to say anything today. I would have just kept it. And I was saying, like, I was putting down tweets today saying, like, they haven't said anything yet. Hadn't said anything yet. And it wasn't anything about the social people. Like, I know how hard that job is, especially when it comes to a situation like that. But there is somebody in charge of those people that is in charge of all the team communications and approved that post going out, and also approved the fact that they weren't going to say anything else. There was no public statement from the Bills account saying that statement was put through through reporters sent to them. The announcement of him not playing today wasn't through the Bills account. It was through Adam Schefter, which Schefter is like an NFL press release, basically, when you leak it to him, but it's still just avoiding talking about it to begin with. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is no comment is a big comment. And in this case, you want to hear somebody give something. Looking at it from the most optimistic is the wrong word, but the only thing that I can possibly think of, and the reason that they wouldn't address this before this game, and as we get into actually talking about the football later, I think that this kind of connects into it. And maybe I'm not saying that this is the right decision, but there are multiple players on this team who are fighting for a job, fighting for, life-changing jobs. And I feel like there is some sort of credence to this coaching staff and this organization wanting to give those men an opportunity to focus on this game and do something in could possibly be the biggest game in their life. I don't think that's right. I think this is a situation that bears, explanation and accountability earlier rather than later. But that is really the only reason that I can think of that they would not want to say anything, unless they are just complicit with it as well, which is not, I haven't wanted to get to that point yet. I've been battling with it all day today. My feeling, I said yesterday, like the air is really out of the balloon for me. The excitement for the Bills season that I had the last 7 months since the Kansas City game, waiting for this season, kind of out of the balloon. I don't know when it's going to go back, but that's the only like silver lining that I could possibly think of. And then we will get our answers after this game. That's what I'm hoping for.
It's ultimately about what happens next. It's they did the right thing tonight. They're not playing him. He's not dressed. They did the right thing tonight. Ultimately, it matters about what McDermott says at the post-game press conference and what happens tomorrow. Is he going to be a Bill come Monday morning? That's what's really going to matter. The NFL created the commissioner's exempt list for things like this, it would seem, and they didn't really use it for Deshaun Watson, which I felt would have been perfect, which even though he was kind of on a pseudo commissioner's exempt list all last year.
Pretty much, yeah.
This is the perfect scenario to use something like that. And they created this system for cases like this, it seems, and they don't use it either. So ultimately, for now, I think, there was a lot of people who I think would have been really, really hurt if he had played tonight. And hopefully, at the minimum, it's we don't see him, at least until there's more clarity, in the situation.
Definitely. And like we've mentioned at the beginning, it's an ongoing criminal investigation, as the Bills mentioned. They said they conducted a thorough investigation. That's going to be a question that is hit a lot, I'm sure, later on tonight, of what entailed that investigation, because a lot of speculation of how thorough and what that means. And like we said, NFL teams, we don't know the capability they have with those. But yeah, I think we'll get a lot of answers later tonight. It's just a sad situation at any time. I think I want to say that I've had the same tone when any of these things have come up and been consistent. It's not any different than it's with the Bills. And I haven't thought about anything on the field wise. I feel for the players that have to go through this situation and deal with this as well. And just, I feel for everybody. And the biggest thing I want to, before we try to somehow segue into football, unless you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add. I think Bill's Mafia Chicks earlier posted this, the sexual assault hotline. I'll repost that from the Crowd Assist podcast later. If there's anybody who needs to talk to somebody who suffered from sexual assault or is, been triggered by conversations and everything else, please call the hotline. There's help out there. And, everybody else in support of all of you. And hopefully that we can move on with a resolution from this after tonight. That is, we're never going to forget what has happened, transpired here with this organization going forward for as long as they are in place. But hopefully that we get the right move made after that. So let's try to get into some football. Let's have some fun tonight, because we've had a long 24 hours, as we said before we got on here. And there is some important football stuff going on tonight with the Buffalo Bills, and especially some roster spots. So that's really what we're looking at. Third preseason game. Guys are really going to be battling for some spots. Who are some guys that you're looking at that you think have the most to gain and the most to lose tonight in this final preseason game?
So the big two that I have on my list, the first two, is Jake Kumerow and Isaiah Hodgins. It's really a battle for a sixth spot. I don't think they're going to keep 7 wide receivers when you look at how they built their roster the last 4 or 5 years. And it's really going to be a battle of special teams, and it's not a conversation people love having. Hodgins is probably the better pass catcher. Hodgins is probably offers you more on offense if he has to play. But Kumerow has a lot higher upside when it comes to special teams. And we saw Brandon Beane's comments last, I think it was earlier this week, that said if you don't play special teams, or if you're not able to play special teams, he does not really a role for you on this team. And Hodgins has played a little special teams this preseason. He's played, I have the numbers right here, he's played on 4 kick returns, 6 kick coverages, 4 punt returns, 3 punt coverages, and his PFF grade, once again, grain of salt, it was only a 53.9. You look at Jake Kumerow, has at least is up in a 66 PFF grade for his special teams play. So it's, can Hodgins make himself a valuable enough special teams player that his offense can offset the special teams value Jake Kumerow brings?
Meerkat would be loving hearing you talk about his boy Isaiah Hodgins. Do you think that Hodgins has, like, if you would put a percentage on it, what do you think that is the percentage for Hodgins and Kumerow? Do you think it's possible they keep both in any potential way?
So it's if they keep both, it probably is a scenario where someone like Jamison Crowder doesn't make the team, right? I just think there's too many other spots where they need depth that I don't see them keeping 7 wide receivers.
It would be tough, definitely.
And I think I give right now the upper leg to Kumerow. I'd say like 60%, not super much, not a ton, but it's just because he's such a good special teams player. And we know how much this team values special teams. Look at the guys who haven't played at all this preseason. Tyler Medikevich, Saran Neal, Taiwan Jones, all special team only guys who haven't played. And Jake Kumerow is essentially a special teams only guy. So if Hodgins makes the team, there's a real chance that until someone gets hurt, he's a game day inactive player. So he needs to prove himself. He's proven himself as a pass catcher, I think. I think everyone knows what he brings as a pass catcher, but definitely. Can he prove himself to be valuable enough, or at least passive? Maybe even valuable is the right word. Maybe passable enough as a special teams player that he can take that job from Kumerow.
Definitely. I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball with mine here, because I'm very interested in this tight end battle at this point. I think that the Deion Dawkins restructure was very interesting the other day. Being told us it was coming, so we were expecting something to happen, and we saw that it was Deion Dawkins who got his contract restructured this week. Everybody's belief is that it's opening up. Well, I guess I shouldn't say everybody's belief, but speculation is that it's for the Odell Beckham potential move. We've seen Von Miller just relentlessly posting on Instagram about Odell Beckham, and that cap space about 10 million, whatever. I feel like that's about the range that they would need to keep bringing him in. But there is the case of OJ Howard, who has not impressed in camp at all. And we've heard great reports all camp about Quinnen Morris and Tommy Sweeney. We've heard about Morris potentially, having an impact on special teams. And if they don't have a trade partner, they could cut OJ Howard, but would need to eat $2 million in cap. And so restructuring that deal is very interesting for me if they decide that they just wanted to cut loose OJ Howard and eat that cap because they feel that Tommy Sweeney and Quinton Morris as their two tight ends give them a better chance to win. And this is a team that, I mean, everything we're going to be talking about roster-wise tonight is all just very much on the margins. This team, as we've talked about, I'm sure you have as well, ad nauseum, like this is the most complete roster it looks like in the NFL at every position. There's guys that can play everywhere. These battles in training camp have been so interesting compared to years past because there's not like a big time, I guess besides the cornerback, which has been the most interesting battle for me since the beginning. There hasn't been like a big time battle that is going to have, hopefully isn't going to have big implications on what the starting roster is going to look like going into Los Angeles in week 1. But OJ Howard to me, just athletically, seeing what he looked like at the beginning of his career, he just looks like he's lost a step. And that was what his biggest thing was coming out of college, was his athleticism at that tight end position, to basically be, one of these jumbo size wide receiver / tight ends, like a wide receiver who's wide receiver type athleticism with a tight end build was what his biggest thing was. And it hasn't flashed that to me as well. And I just don't know. I think if it wasn't for the money, there would be no reason to justify keeping him on this roster at this point. But am I being too extreme with that, or what do you think?
It's not, it's not even that hot takey when you look at the fact that he's playing late. He's played late into both his preseason games.
Last game, right?
Played into the fourth quarter in both the games, I'm pretty sure. Quinton Morris has played with the ones, I think, last week, or was playing early in the first quarter last year. So it's not that, hot of a take to go off of, or it's not that hot, it's not that hot takey. It's such a tough situation because I think that is that $2.5 million isn't a small cap number to eat. I'm curious if he's this year, if there's another trade coming up, if he's someone the Bills would be willing, if someone would be calling about. But it is confusing because he's someone that I think we really thought was not only going to make this roster, was going to have a substantive role in the offense during the regular season. So it's definitely been a really, really weird case. And whether it's him playing bad, Quinton Morris playing really well, and you brought up a really good point that I think it was last year there was only 2 tight ends, really 2, on this roster, because Reggie Gilliam, who's a roster lock, is also kind of listed in there as
the H-back. I love that the Bills have an H-back. My favorite thing. Yeah, keep going.
And he's kind of a pseudo tight end as well. He's kind of a tight end as well. So he kind of factors into that count. So it's not absurd that they only keep 2 tight ends on paper. And it's just how much of this playing into the fourth quarter stuff is because he's a third string tight end right now, or how much of it's because they want to get him reps. It's a really weird situation. I had that in my notes too. It's just something I haven't really been able to get a read on because he's such a talented guy and he's produced at times in his career.
And they gave him, that's a pretty nice contract with a nice signing bonus that they like. You don't give that contract out if you don't expect him to be a contributor. And it's really strange. I would imagine that they've been taking calls on him this past week. If they were taking calls on Cody Ford and everything, I'm sure that they've or I shouldn't say taking calls, making calls on him to see if there's anybody interested. So that final cut down day is going to be really interesting for the tight end position. Anything on the defensive side of the ball that you're looking for tonight?
Cam Lewis is a really interesting situation to me. He played safety in the last game. Guy who's been on this roster for a couple years now. He's played well. I think we forget in 2020 when they had to bench Taron Johnson for a quick second, and he played in that Kansas City game. He played really well and then immediately got hurt. And then Taron Johnson never looked back after that from getting his job back. But he's a guy who I think has proven that he can at least be a replacement level talent in this league. And now that they're trying him out at all these different spots is really interesting. Do we see him again at safety tonight? Do we see him at outside corner tonight? Do we see him inside? How are the Bills going to use him? Are they trying to find a way to sneak him onto the roster? Is he battling for a roster spot with a guy like Damar Hamlin, or is he battling for a roster spot with one of the cornerbacks here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but he's a really unique chess piece who's been able to kind of stick around this roster and always has great preseason. So he's a guy that I'm really curious to see how he's deployed and how he plays tonight.
And there's been the rumors about the second he would get exposed that the Giants would scoop him up immediately too. And that's the thing with this. I think that's one of the interesting things with too, because he's not a guy that they can put on the practice squad because he's going to get signed right away. Like they kind of have to make a decision on him. He was the exact guy I was thinking of too. You read my mind there. And it's because of that versatility. We know how much McDermott and Bean love those guys that can play multiple positions and everything. And it was really interesting to see him get out there at safety, not just for the fact of what it means for Cam Lewis, but yeah, like you said, what it means for the other safeties too, because I think in my mind, I've just had Jaquan Johnson and DeMar Hamlin penciled in as, the backup safeties for this season, no matter what. And if they think that Cam Lewis brings something else to the table or they saw something in there, it could be another trade potential for one of those guys or something else. I do think there's going to be a surprise move. I feel like every year there's always a surprise roster move from them when they come to cut down day or everything else. Maybe that was the Cody Ford trade, which that was a little bit of a surprise to me because he's had such a strong camp and everything. But I think that they like the versatility that they have with their other offensive linemen right now. So not as surprising. Is there anything else you're looking for tonight before we wrap up with our pregame here? Any other players that you're looking to see? I'm always interested in the quarterbacks, so I want to see how Case Keenum and Mark Barkley perform again. We saw Keenum with the ones look the part of the ones last week, but then he just looked so much more comfortable last week than he did in week 1. So interested to see how he follows up. But anybody else for you that you're looking forward to see?
Well, I'm also excited because the quarterbacks. We now have the top 3 quarterbacks taken in the 2018 draft, all on one field, which I think is a really funny storyline that I feel like
there was a picture of them. There was a picture of them before the game already, and I was like, that's hilarious. Yeah.
All 3. For me, I've been fascinated this season with the edge rushers, who's going to be that kind of second line edge rusher to steal a hockey term. It looks like AJ Epinesa is looks like he's going to steal some of those snaps. Can Boogie Basham play himself in some snaps? That's something I'm really interested in. And I've also been really interested in, once again, this is a conversation that goes when you have a deep roster. We're not even talking about roster spots. We're talking about playing time, who can play themselves in the playing time. And I'm really interested just to see how these running backs do. I'm assuming Devin Singletary probably doesn't play again. So I'm excited to see and I'm assuming, Zach Moss was the second running back. I assume we're not going to see a ton from him tonight. So I'm excited to watch some James Cook and see if he gets some real extended time out there in this game and see the different ways they can use him. And because I think he and, limited preseason snaps has been really exciting. So those are the other 2 places I'm looking at today.
Yeah, I'm all aboard James Cook Island. That definitely, I'm really excited about that. I saw a great bet someone put out before with their underdog fantasy, Raheem Blackshear over 42.5 rushing yards. Think that's a lock tonight. That guy's going to get a lot of action too. Excited to see what he's able to pull out. But yeah, I'm with you there with the edge rushers. I think Epinesa is kind of that second level behind Von Miller and Greg Rousseau right now. He's kind of separated himself. So Boogie Basham and Shaq Lawson, I mean, they were going at it last week. Shaq Lawson declaring that he's back after in the second preseason game is a bold take, but he did look impressive last week. And that's exactly what you're saying. Who's going to have that playing time? And we know that whoever it is going to have opportunities the way that they run this defense to make plays in a regular season game. I'm interested in Balin Spector, a guy that's been, on some 53-man projections, on, off the roster on some. That comes down to special teams, I think, too, as much as anything else in that linebacker position. It's gonna be a fun night, I think. Just to see the third preseason game is always fun. It's always chaotic. Is there any player or thing that you remember from the third, fourth preseason games? I think me and you we're pretty much the same age. I think we've pretty much experienced all the same preseason games. There's a couple players I have in mind, but is there anybody that you just like, even if it was good or bad? Like, it doesn't have to be a good memory, but
that fourth preseason game for years and years and years was always against the Lions. It was always a Lions.
Yeah, it was.
And the one moment that sticks out in my head will be Matt Sims throwing the ball backwards against the Lions. That's one that always sticks out to me.
Oh man.
I went to a game. This one of my first ever Bills games was a preseason game against the David Garrard Jags that went into overtime. So I saw a really rare Bills playoff overtime game. Years. I mean, this has to be almost 50. I don't know how long ago David
Garrard, yeah,
15 years ago.
Yeah, 15, something like that.
But those are. But whenever I think about Bills preseason, it was always those fourth Detroit Lions, because the Lions were also a mess. I mean, they still are a mess in those times. So many just some of the guys who've come through. Vince Young against the Vikings.
You just read my mind. See, I come from a family. So my family, my dad is a Penn State football fan, and my mom is a Texas football fan. It's both very random, but just how I've grown up. So obviously, Vince Young is like idolized in my household. So when he signed with the Bills, we were like, oh my God, like this is a dream come true. So I vividly remember the entire Vince Young experience. He will always be number one in my obscure Bills power ranking for hey, I still think it could have worked out. I still think it could have worked out, but what are we gonna do? But I'm so glad you said that. It was right where I was going to. They had, speaking of having guys from the same draft, didn't they have Vince Young and Matt Leinart on the roster at the same time?
Matt Leinert's another guy you forget. Matt Flynn was a Bill for a second.
Yep.
He was in one of those fourth preseason games, I remember. Yeah, there's a lot. It's fun going back and looking at some of those rosters. Obviously, you always see the clips come out around this time. I was at the Josh Allen, the first game against Carolina when he came out, and he threw that ball as far as he could to Robert Foster on the first play out of bounds.
Yeah.
That's something that always sticks out in my mind. And then also, it's always, there's always a preseason guy that people fall in love with who ultimately fades. So this year it seems to be, Raheem Blackshear. And, the Brandon Rileys of the world, the Rick Rodgers, the Eric Strikers of the world. It's always fun, they're always a lot of fun. Remember this guys in the fourth preseason game.
Meerkat will be mad if I don't mention it, but Mike Gillislee is the hero of our fourth preseason game hearts. He really is.
Martin Murphy.
Exactly. All right, Ryan, before we go enjoy this game, I'm throwing this at you. I didn't prep you for this because you are famous on Twitter for your power rankings. And so I'm going to give you an option here. What's your favorite fast food place?
Oh, Taco Bell. Not even
that. I'm going to Taco Bell after this right now. Actually, I'm not going to lie. So I need you to power rank the top 3 Taco Bell items.
Oh, cheesy gordita crunch, chicken quesadilla, and the third one has got to be I always get a different third one. I'll go cheesy fiesta potatoes. I don't even know if they.
Ooh.
Those are always. I always got the cheesy fiesta potatoes.
I'm a steak quesadilla fan, but I understand that's not the popular take. But the chicken quesadilla and cheesy gordita crunch, that's an unbeatable too. I agree with your power rankings on this time. Usually, I can't say I do all the time, but today I'm working with it. Thank you for that. All right, that's gonna do it for the Crosses podcast. Try to go enjoy some Bills football tonight. Thank you for joining us here, Ryan Sullivan. Do you want to put your plugs in?
Yeah, just check out Cover One, guys. We got a lot of stuff coming out. We're selling the one pass. I think it's $57 for the year, and you get a lot of great written content, a lot of great behind the scenes, or a lot of great videos that are locked that you'll get access to. Really, really great value. And then just on YouTube, weekly shows with Greg, Aaron, the Air Raid guys, Kevin and Mike. A lot of great stuff. A lot of great videos going on over there. Cover One. So just go over at Cover One. You'll find all our stuff. A lot of cool stuff going on over there.
Yes, go support Cover One. I love all the work you guys are doing. Appreciate you all putting in the time and effort there. So that's going to do it for the Crowdless podcast here. For Jake Micah, Ryan Sullivan, go enjoy some Bills football. Go Bills. That's it. That's how I'm ending it. Go Bills.